Hello, everyone. Welcome back to College Football Coast to Coast. It is Jacob and Tyler here, as usual, coming at you guys 30 minutes earlier than normal. So, maybe wanted to get an early start on it. I got to go to work this afternoon, and a couple other things I got to take care of. Christmas lights on the house, things like that. Because it is that time of year. We're getting close there. And it's also a good time of year if you mark your calendar for the Army Navy game, of course, that we saw on Saturday. Tyler, my opinion, best game of the year. Um, it doesn't matter how bad the teams are, how good the teams are, or how better one team is than the other. I just feel like that game embodies everything that football should be, how passionate a fan base is. And of course, it means a lot that our armed forces are, those guys are serving our country, and it's good to watch them be competitive, and it's always good fun there, and a little bit of bragging rights between those two branches. Of course, Army wins in overtime here against Navy, 20-17. Um, I want to get your thoughts on it, Tyler. As far as the teams go, both of them kind of around the same record capacity, I guess we could say. Pretty balanced this year. Um, for you, what does this game, first of all, mean to you as far as watching this game, and where do you rank it in there in the college football, games of the year type thing? And the outcome of it. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, they could both be 0 and 12, these teams, and there would just be a lot to play for. There is a trophy that all the the Naval Academy and then Army and Air Force ended up taking the Commanders in Chief trophy with a 9-3 record. Our Air Force is able to take care of business with Navy and Army. But like you mentioned, the records, Navy coming into this game was 4-7. Army was 5-6. Army, even with their 6 win, they did not get the bowl bid. I think they played an amount of FCS teams where you have to get to 7 wins. Actually, that's the same thing that happened to I believe it was either New Mexico State. I think New Mexico State was in that reign. They got the nod though, but yeah, this game, honestly, with all the great rivalries that we have, Michigan, Ohio State has been up there, the Egg Bowl, just because of how the ties that we have to the Mississippi Gulf Coast. That's always, but just historically, I mean, this sits on the greatest week on college football. I mean, you after conference championship week, there's really not a game that you're looking for, and this is like the only game. So of course, everyone's going to be watching it. It's two great historic programs. Navy has had their time in 2019. I know you mentioned on last night's show, our Navy was ranked. They got 9 wins. Army has been up and down program. I mean, at one point in this, historic rivalry, Army was losses in 14 straight years, and now it's been flip flopped. So, I mean, this has got to be number one on your list. Whenever we're looking for a college football game on week 15, we always go to this one, and the bowl games will get rolling this weekend, start on the 16th, and then it'll go all the way into the early January month to the national championship. But going into this game, this was a very sleepy start for these games. Not a whole lot of offense. Both of these offenses, as we know, I'm sure that college football fans know this as well, that they love to run the triple option. What are you doing a show? Okay, well, we got my guest appearance here, but
The Tigers.
oh my God! Can you get it? Okay, but going back into this game, I mean, this was a very sleepy start for both of these offenses. I mean, the only touchdown that we saw in the first half was on an Army special teams. They blocked a punt. It was almost a safety, but he was able to scoop it up. It was 7-3. And then Navy, their lone touchdown came in the second half. It was a big run, a big touchdown run by Navy's running back. So, I mean, these were two very good defenses. It was 10-10, but overtime, man, this game completely changed. I mean, Army was first to step on the field on offense. Their first play, touchdown. Navy's first play, which was a pass, like that was only the third pass attempt of the game, touchdown. And then after that, you got to feel it for Navy's running back. Just fumble at the one. He was crushed after the game, because that's how what means to this game. Not only are you playing, for your country, really, you're trying. It's, the tradition is the winning team plays their alma mater second. So that means a lot to both the Navy and Army as well. So Army was able to sing second. They were able to boot a 34-yard field goal. It was straight and true. And what a game it was. It went from a very sleepy game to a game that I was very intrigued of watching. So definitely, whenever the troops get together, you got to be watching if you're a college football fan.
Absolutely. And I think, in news surrounding this game, to look at Navy kind of parts ways with their head coach mutually after this game. Really was no fire in this one. We really didn't get any news about him being fired or anything. It was just a release at that point. And as far as their interim coming in, Brian Newberry is going to be their guy. Um, of course, it means nothing as of right now because the season is over. But Neil had a great question here. How do you feel with the college, expansion coming potentially being played on this weekend? Uh, First, my thoughts. I think that this game itself um, needs to be reserved for a weekend by itself. I think it's that much hype around it. I get the expansion things, but it just feels like if they're going to go all in with the expansion, then of course you already know the season's going to be longer. Just get ready for it. I mean, that really is what it is. So, it's nothing different from any of the bowls. We do have a couple of weeks off,
Yeah.
before, the bowl season starts. So I can't see it changing too much in regards to it. I feel like this game just means a lot and it should be put by itself. I don't know what are your thoughts on it, Tyler?
I agree. I think that this, with how historic this game has been, it has to be on its own weekend. I mean, there should be no other college football games. This should be the focus because that's what everyone's is going to be watching. I feel like it's really a quick fix. So the week 0 just moved the week 1 games up. So usually week 1 starts off on the first weekend of September. I think it's an easy fix to just put it on the last weekend of August. So that way you're adding probably 1 or 2 more games. If you think about it, there'll be a first round and then there'll be a quarterfinal, semifinal, and then a national championship. I think the national championship, it has to end before the Super Bowl. It can't really go. You don't want to tie into the first week of February. You don't really want to compete with the Super Bowl. So I think as of now, it's really a quick fix. Just move up the games 1 week. You can still have the same bye, just one bye week per team. I wouldn't necessarily go to 2 bye weeks per team. I just think that would just be an overkill at their rate. I think that 1 bye week, especially at the middle of the season, whenever you get into that November and then December stretch, especially if you make the playoffs. So I think that's a quick fix. Keep the Army Navy game at the end of the season after the conference championship, but really just take out week 0 and just move up the week 1 games. That way, with the added games, you can still finish on the, January 9th or January 8th, wherever the national championship date falls.
Yeah. Uh, and of course, that being the only game, that is the only
Yeah.
game that we're going to recap. Of course, there's other news regarding some players and some teams that we are going to be talking about here really quick. But of course, that segment is brought to you by Buffalo Bayou Brewing Company. If you guys want to head over there and get all of your beer and food needs in Houston, of course, in the best beer and the best food there for the views of the city of downtown Houston. You guys can also see all their specialty stuff for around the holiday time here. I know they're having a little bit of sale on it. So if you guys want to head over to www.buffbrew.com, that is www.buffbrew.com. Go see our guys over at Buffalo Bayou Brewing Company. Tyler, first things first, biggest thing outside of this Army Navy game is Caleb Williams wins the Heisman Trophy. He is the second USC player since 2005. Of course, Reggie Bush was the previous winner of that Heisman Trophy before it was taken away from him. But this being a big accomplishment for Caleb Williams and for the USC Trojans. I know it's not where they wanted to be. I know this is probably on the back burner for the entire team because of them missing the college football playoffs. Of course, they lose that game to Utah, and it basically kills their chances. But let's stay on Caleb Williams for a second. Caleb Williams had a really good season for USC. I think, he had expectations for them to make it there. A lot of people had expectations for them to be a really good breakout team, and he had to be the leader of that team in order for that to happen. Got all the way there, and of course, they just fall short. Plays through an injury. I mean, it is tough to play through injuries, as we've seen, and basically didn't have much help in the run game. But of course, if you play good teams in a conference championship, you're going to play against the best of the best in your conference, and you're going to have to fight to the death. And they really did. And of course, Utah did get the better of them. Um, you know, your other three people sitting there, Max Duggins, Stetson Bennett, and CJ Stroud all sitting there. You could make a case for all of them right there. All had great seasons. For Stetson Bennett, uh, you know, undefeated season for the Georgia Bulldogs, basically led that team the last 2 years to where they are right now. Um, Single-handedly carrying that offense. Of course, he's got great weapons there to help him out as well. Pass game was big for Georgia this year, so he's a big piece. For Max Duggins, TCU, absolute Cinderella story for them, coming back from years of not being in contention and kind of being that team from the Mountain West to move to the Big 12 and just kind of sat there for the longest time, just kind of riding the waves. And here they are, led by an excellent quarterback, and he's still got a lot of time left to develop. I think he will probably be a very excellent NFL quarterback someday. And for CJ Stroud, I mean, Ohio State really had a great season outside of their tough loss and a blowout loss to Michigan. I mean, CJ Stroud close to, the same amount of passing touchdowns as last year, still sitting in that spot, still there again. I think probably will end up being there again. So it's just one of those things where these guys are going to be reoccurring. You see them sitting there over and over, just competing for a Heisman Trophy because it really has become a quarterback award, and I'm sure you probably want to get into that.
Yeah, really, the Heisman Trophy is slowly turning into the quarterback award. I just don't even remember when the last time that we've had not a non-quarterback win. You would have to go either to the early 2000s. Really, the only name that comes to mind is Reggie Bush, former USC running back. But I kind of figured that Caleb Williams, after his performance after Notre Dame, after the UCLA game, that he pretty much had it locked up. I know that he didn't have a great game against Utah, but Neil brought up a good point on 2 weeks ago that really stuck with me. The Heisman voters vote before the conference championship games, so I'm pretty sure that most of the voters voted Caleb Williams after that performance against Notre Dame to end the season. It was a really good performance that boosted USC not only into the playoff discussion but also into the Pac-12 championship against Utah. But like you mentioned in his speech, he literally said flat out to all the other finalists, like, I know that I won the award, but you guys are going to be playing for a national championship, and I'm not. And I know that really irks him. I think that was a really big reason of why he wanted to transfer to USC. USC already had the talent in place, and then to bring a head coach like Lincoln Riley, who, has had success in the regular season, but really the main question has been, like, can he win in a playoff game? And Oklahoma hasn't really been able to show that. At USC, you added Jordan Addison, one of the top go-getters in the transfer portal this offseason coming from Pittsburgh. Jordan Addison had a really good season as well. That was his main target that he went to. The running game helped with Travis Dye. He was leading the way, former Oregon running back. So I think in the end they got it right. But the thing that I saw was just the difference in voters. I mean, you could just see it. Caleb Williams, over 2,000 votes. Max Duggan in second place got 1,000 votes. So I just don't think that, Caleb Williams was that far ahead of Max Duggan really in statistics wise. I feel like all four quarterbacks really had similar seasons, but nonetheless, congratulations to Caleb Williams. Mr. Hollywood, he adds another USC quarterback to the Heisman discussion. We saw Carson Palmer, Matt Leinart was close to win the Heisman, but ended up being Reggie Bush that season. So USC is just adding to that Heisman Trophy case.
Yeah, it just seems, you made a good point there. Before we move on, I think the thing is that I don't know if USC not making the college football playoff had anything to play into the fact that Caleb Williams did win it. I think it raised a lot of question marks around it. The Heisman Trophy is the Heisman Trophy, and congratulations, you get it. You're in a group of elite, players of their time, and it's great and all, but you're going to be doing Nissan Heisman commercials for the rest of time. Congratulations in the Heisman house, where Baker Mayfield has made more money doing that than he has been playing football. So it's good and it's kind of pointless at the same time. I'm sure a national championship would have been on Caleb Williams' resume a little higher up on the resume if that was to happen this year. But we'll have to wait for another season to see if USC can do that. Um, Moving on to another quarterback, of course, is Devin Leary. Devin Leary was the quarterback for NC State for the Wolfpack. Really had a lot of high hopes and expectations for the Wolfpack this year. Of course, I had NC State facing off against North Carolina in the ACC Championship. North Carolina did make it there, but NC State did not. Of course, them losing Devin Leary and starting the season kind of slow played into that. So, right now, of course, yes, it is the Devin Leary sweepstakes. Yeah, 3 teams right now really battling for him right now, or talking with him as far as the transfer portal goes. That first team being Auburn, the Auburn Tigers. They need help immediately. And of course, they got Hugh Freeze in order to start that helping process. And I'm sure that helps them out in recruiting big time. Another team is Notre Dame. Of course, Notre Dame loses their quarterback Drew Pine to the Wisconsin Badgers. Of course, that's a big loss for Notre Dame. I don't think anybody saw that coming, to be honest with you, to start the transfer portal season. So I think they need a lot of help too at quarterback and a good field general, and Devin Leary is definitely that. And last being South Carolina, this one kind of strikes me a little strange. Being Spencer Rattler there has kind of been that guy. It just doesn't seem logical to go after Devin Leary, because who are you going to go to? And I don't think Devin Leary wants to back up anybody. I don't think that's his aspirations at all. I think he really wants to be that starting quarterback. I mean, at his level of competitiveness, and where he is in his years left, for eligibility, I think he wants to be a starting quarterback. So South Carolina just seems strange. And of course, the newest one being he'll be visiting with the Kentucky Wildcats this week. Of course, they're losing Will Levis, high projected draft pick for the NFL coming up. I know Tyler's thoughts on that are a little bit nah. So, and of course, with me, I think it's the same way. I just don't think that's logical for him to be that high on the draft boards, but he'll go to the NFL regardless of the situation. So Kentucky will need a quarterback as well. Your thoughts, Tyler, out of those teams, who really has the best shot at landing Devin Leary as their field general?
Yeah, those are some interesting teams, but I could all see. I mean, these are 4 really schools that definitely need a quarterback, like you mentioned, Notre Dame or Drew Pine going to who knows. I think that he's going to Wisconsin. That's not official yet, but that's my prediction. Next is Auburn. We're already seeing Zach Calzado. He's entering the transfer portal. Robbie Ashford had an okay freshman year. I mean, it was just the team. Mako was not good. It was really Tank Bigsby. The receivers, Cole Moore was pretty much the only guy that they had in the receiving core. And then South Carolina is strange to me. I don't know if they're thinking that Spencer Rattler is going to declare for the NFL draft. I'm on the mindset that he's going to stay for his senior year and come back for one more year. I think that he would do wonders for himself. I think that if he had a really good season, put up some good numbers with the South Carolina team next year, you're going to have all your dudes back. We did see Marshawn Lloyd just a couple of minutes ago enter the transfer portal, South Carolina star running back. So this is just going to be really the culture of college football. And this is going to be the culture of the show in the offseason. This is going to be a lot of transfer portal talk, like guys like Devin Leary and the guy that we're going to be talking about in a couple of minutes. But out of these 4, I would have to say the most likely landing spots would be Notre Dame and Auburn. I'm going to give it to Auburn. I think that not only is we're going to see Zach Calzada enter the transfer portal, but I think that TJ Finley is going to be the next guy that enters the transfer portal. I really think that it's going to be a 1-2 competition. Robbie Ashford, to me, is not the guy and not the answer. for Hugh Freeze's offense. I think if you can get a veteran guy that knows how to play in big games. I mean, NC State, like you mentioned, you made a really good point. This team was absolutely rolling before the injury, and then that offense just could not find its identity. I think that the defense was able to step it up, but you can have a really good defense, but if you have an offense that can't score, you're not going to win a lot of college football games. So I think that Devin Leary to Auburn makes the most sense. But I could see like a sleeper team like Kentucky. That would also make sense as well, especially with Will Levis. There's really no one behind him after that. But in the end, I think that he ends up at the Plains. I think that would be a successful first-year job for Hugh Freeze and land a guy like Devin Leary. I mean, I was surprised that he's entering the transfer portal and thinking about playing another season. I think he did enough. But if he can do good, in the SEC, boy, can he improve his draft stock as well. I mean, he could be like a Will Levis type of quarterback. Last year, getting a lot of next year, in 2024, whenever the NFL draft, he could be getting the hype if he has a really good season at Auburn.
And for me, I think the team that sticks out to me is Notre Dame. Of course, storied program. And I think Devin Leary really has an opportunity there with the young head coach. A lot of bright spots to look at for Notre Dame season, winning some big games. I think there's a lot there left on the table for Notre Dame. And I think that he sees that. And I hope he recognizes that Notre Dame is a really good program to develop guys. I mean, NFL is in the cards when you go to Notre Dame. It's going to happen. So I think that would be a good spot for him. I can see him wearing the blue and gold there. It seems like a really good fit there for him, staying there, playing sort of the same teams. I mean, Notre Dame is in the ACC basically. So, I mean, it's pretty close there. They play some big games. I mean, I really think this could be the spot for him. And of course, you thinking Auburn, both excellent spots. I think, first of all, I think South Carolina is out of the running. I just don't see that happening with Spencer Rattler still there. And of course, you mentioned Zach Calzada. I think he's a very interesting one because, of course, he didn't play very much. He's sat for a long time, injuries. It's just he needs to find a program, whether it be a big program or a small program. He just needs an opportunity, I think, in a Power 5 spot, wherever that is. It just seems like maybe the ACC is the right spot. I could see Calzada going to NC State. If he does go to NC State, I think there's a lot of upside there for him. It is an ACC program. You get to play Clemson. You get to play a lot of big teams. So I think there's a lot of upside to that. For Devin Leary leaving it, it opens a spot up for somebody else, coming in from the transfer portal. Excellent coaching staff there at NC State. It is really a family brotherhood type mantra there at NC State with the Wolfpack, and they pride themselves on their play. So I really think that could be an upside. You mentioned a second ago, we do have somebody else that entered the transfer portal that we'll be talking about. And of course, that is Grayson McCall, who is the quarterback currently for Coastal Carolina in the Sun Belt Conference. He has entered the transfer portal, but he will be playing in their bowl game that is coming up, which is good to see. They do need a quarterback in order to do that because I have no idea who their backup quarterback is, and I'm sure people that even attend their school don't even know who their backup quarterback is. So that's going to be very interesting for Coastal Carolina in the future. But for Grayson McCall, I think Power 5 program is absolutely on the table for him. Is it a big Power 5 school? Probably not. I just don't see that happening. I think he can get a Power 5 school. Who do you have on the radar for Grayson McCall? I mean, it can't be a big program, but it's got to be a team that's going to compete at the Power 5 level.
Yeah, I agree with you. I just don't see him going to like a Penn State or somebody like high as that. I could see him, he could stay in the group of 5, maybe go to American school like a UCF, like a Cincinnati, but I just don't see that. Really, the only team that would make sense right now, especially with Devin Leary for NC State. I mean, Clemson already has their guy with Klubniak, so he can't go there. So maybe he can slip into one of these new head coaches as he go follow Satterfield to Cincinnati or whoever Louisville hires. Does he go there? But I just feel like he's going to the Pac-12. There's just something about me that he's just going to go out into the West Coast. And, maybe Oregon is a play, especially with what Bo Nix does. But really, the only school that I could see, I'll go UCLA. I think that DTR is going to declare for the NFL draft. So I think that Chip Kelly is going to be on the phone call and calling Grayson McCall. And he's going to be calling for him to be the next quarterback. So I think that would make sense. I think that DTR, I think he's already accepted the Senior Bowl invite already. So I think that DTR is going to be gone, so you're going to need another guy, and why not give Grayson McCall a chance at UCLA out on the West Coast? So it's definitely worked. I mean, the transfer portal has been. I mean, we've seen guys like, I hate to bring him up again, Bo Nix. He went from an East Coast and now on to the West Coast. So I could see this happen again. So I'll say UCLA early on.
I almost went big here. I really thought about this one a lot, and I think for me, I was about to pull the trigger on a big school.
Oh, what are
And
you
that
thinking?
I think that big school is Texas A&M.
Oh,
I
okay.
think that they need a go-to field general, and they just don't have it. That's the problem. They've got quarterbacks, they just don't have the right person at quarterback. And I think if you bring in a guy from a group of 5 school that's played really well, has won a ton of games, and really turned that Coastal Carolina program into a bowl-bound program every single year, I think it's got to be a big school. I can see it being in the SEC if he wants to stay in the South or on the East Coast. I can see it being A&M. I mean, the conference is growing; it's about to get bigger. I can see that being a factor. As far as another team in the SEC, Oklahoma is another option there
Could
as
we
well.
see potentially Alabama giving him a call?
Alabama,
Yeah, with
I
Bryce Young out, are you going to roll with Milrow?
I just think there's other opportunities for Alabama. I just don't think that they're going to pay attention to a guy like Grayson McCall. It just seems like he would be a guy that they would overlook. It just doesn't seem right that Alabama would go after a guy from a group of 5 school. That's just not Alabama. So that's why I can't see that. I can see Oklahoma, though. Of course, their starting quarterback goes down this year. I mean, same story, and really need somebody to step up and be a go-to guy. They're moving to the SEC here shortly, and they need a guy who's going to be able to get them to that spot and get them there to be at least a ranked team and be competitive when they get to the SEC. I think that is an option for Grayson McCall, an excellent quarterback, really a balanced quarterback, manages the offense really well. I like watching Coastal Carolina's football games for that reason. And he is a good field general. So I look to see what he's going to do in the future. I'm more interested in this than the Devin Leary one, just because I think this can be really big for him going forward. Of course, I did kind of sneak peek it there talking about uh, the SEC and what's to come here in the near future. Uh, Texas and Oklahoma are in talks with the Big 12, of course, of getting out of there a year early. So they could be moving as soon as 2024. And of course, that is after this next season. That would be huge for the SEC, huge for the transfer portal, huge for a lot of these teams on the schedule. Man, I'm talking, this is massive. So I think if something does happen here, Texas and Oklahoma being out, your team's going to the Big 12. Are they going to move up a year early? What's going to happen? It leaves a lot on the table for speculation, Tyler.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of speculating in the next, week or months. Like you mentioned, it was supposed to be 2025, but I'm guessing Texas and Oklahoma want to get out of the Big 12 earlier than usual. So, all right, well, I guess the SEC is going to be having 2 more teams entering. And like I mentioned so many times, Greg Sankey is already discussing that there's not going to be any more divisions, no talk of the pods. I know that was rumored, but it's looking like that it's just going to be 16 teams for the top 2 teams that make it to the SEC championship. So, Texas and Oklahoma is definitely going to be something. I mean, Texas and Oklahoma have struggled in the past couple of years, especially Oklahoma this year. Brent Venables, this was his first year. You lose Caleb Williams, you lose a lot of guys on the offense, and then on the defense, you lose Alex Grinch, your defensive coordinator. He he moved to USC as well. So there was just a lot of problems on the defensive side for Oklahoma. They just couldn't really stop anybody. A 6-6 season. We'll see if they can get their 7th win in the bowl season. I'm going to say right now they're not. They're going to play Florida State, and that's not going to fare well for them since it's in Orlando, so it won't be too far of a drive for Seminole fans. But Texas, on the other hand, is not even – I mean, they beat the same Oklahoma team, what was it, like 49-0 this season? So, I mean, that Texas had really a lot of hype. I know that everyone was talking about, oh, is Texas back? Is this going to be their, Big 12 championship appearance since who knows when the last time that they made it. But I mean, you got Quinn Ewers as your quarterback. That was your guy. You played your tail off against Alabama. He, got injured in that game, and then Texas ended up losing that game. And then after that, the season really just flipped upside his head. I know that you beat a couple of teams that you should, but you also lost to teams that you shouldn't. The one that I can really think of is Texas Tech. That was early in the season. So, I mean, Texas did have one of the best defenses in the Big 12, along with TCU and Kansas State this year. But they got a lot of working to do, both of these programs, before they move into the SEC, because you're already seeing the SEC is slowly changing. Georgia is slowly becoming the new Alabama dynasty. And Alabama is still a wait and see. I'm not going to say that the dynasty is over yet. I mean, it's a 10-2 season. Alabama fans, saying like, oh, that's a bad season. But in realistic terms, that's still a good season. But, I mean, they did have a lot of talent. That was probably one of their more talented teams that they have. But you're seeing, LSU in their first year of Brian Kelly, what they could do. You're seeing, what Tennessee can do. So we'll see with those programs. I mean, all those programs are just going to get better. So Texas and Oklahoma, the recruiting trail is going to get tougher. I mean, Texas, the state of Texas, is it going to be dominated by Texas anymore? Probably not, this way that TCU has been playing as of late, and then Oklahoma. So I think the recruiting trails are going to get tougher. The conference as a whole is going to get tougher. And I just don't see really the success for Texas and Oklahoma once they get into the SEC. I just don't see them, beating teams like Georgia and Alabama right now.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point. For teams like Oklahoma, if they're going to pull a big recruiting class, it's going to hurt teams like Oklahoma State. And the same thing goes for teams in Texas. If Texas is going to the SEC and guys want to play in the SEC, they want to play against the best of the best. They're going to go over there, and it's going to pull a lot of people away from programs like, Texas Tech, TCU, Baylor. It's you're going to pull a lot of guys away. So I think that it's really big for those programs that are staying within their conference, because they're going to have to go recruit somewhere else. I mean, they're really going to have to go outside of their boundaries of where they normally go and go find guys and say, hey, look, this is the Big 12. Teams are bailing, but we need you guys over here to play for our team and for this conference, because two teams have already bailed and gone out the door. And of course, you're welcoming some teams in, so you got some geographical map changes coming up. So I think it really gives a lot of challenges to the scouts and recruiters for these programs on both sides of the SEC and the Big 12.
Yeah, that's a question I also want to ask you. On the flip side, the Big 12, whenever Texas and Oklahoma leaves, you're going to have new teams come in. Now, I'm not quite sure when these new teams are coming out. I think it's fairly soon, either next year or in 2024, when both of these teams are moving. You're getting UCF, you're getting Cincinnati and BYU. So, whenever Texas and Oklahoma leaves, who is going to be, that one team that really takes over in that conference?
For me, I feel like it's going to be BYU. I think BYU, out of those three teams that are coming, I think that's the team that's probably going to be high on the totem pole there as far as being able to compete in the Big 12. They play Big 12 football, really, and I think they have the best odds. I would say UCF is probably last or on the bottom of the totem pole. I just feel like, moving from a group of five to Power Five is tough to do. I mean, that is very tough to do. If you're bringing guys from that level, of course, it gives them a different hunger, for the next level, in a different competitive nature. You're probably opening a little bit more recruiting. So I think that, you get a lot of, you're going to compete with Florida State in Miami for recruits in Florida. For recruits So it's going to be tough, and they're going to have to go outside of their bracket as well to go find some people.
Yeah.
But I think BYU pulls the nature of they get guys from all over the country to come and play for their school. So I think they have the best odds to compete with a team like TCU, because I think TCU is going to be the next powerhouse of the Big 12.
And they do have one of the most underrated coaches as well. But I did pull up an article that says all three of these teams will be entering the Big 12 on July 1st, 2023. So next season we're going to get the new Big 12. So I'm curious to see, are we going to see the likes of that of Oklahoma State, TCU? Is Texas and Oklahoma going to be able to still dominate this conference? This will probably be the final time that they go up against the UCF, go up against. Actually, I forgot about one team. Houston is also joining this as well. So I feel like that could be a program that can take over in the recruiting trail as well in the Big 12. It's a big market city. They have, in the basketball side, that's going to be a really good basketball conference, especially with Houston joining. They were the number one team before they lost to Alabama. So I think, with this new Big 12, there's going to be so many teams. So it's definitely going to be interesting when we have, looking towards next year's show, and we're making sure like who's going to make it to the Big 12 championship. Are we going to see, any of these new teams in next year's Big 12 championship? Wouldn't that be something?
Yeah, that would be something, and it kind of gives, like you said, Texas and Oklahoma one last shot at it. We'll see how.
Dance.
Yeah, we'll see how committed they are to winning their last Big 12 title coming up here next year as those teams are on the move. Of course, you guys know what time it is. It's time for the next sponsor, and that is Fanatics. If you guys want to head over there and get all of your Fanatics gear for your sports teams this winter, go over there and get you a hoodie, get you a beanie or a toboggan or whatever you call it, and go support your team out there for this good bowl season coming up. And of course, that's what we're getting to here. So if you guys want to go over there and get your gear, head over there to that link in our show and get you some gear going for the season. Of course, great gifts coming up for Christmas as well for those college football playoff teams, as well as hockey season. Hockey season is in full swing right now. If you guys want to go get all that gear as well to stay warm rinkside, you guys can do that over there. It is bowl season, so getting to bowl games, it's always good to start off with this one here. I think this is the best one to start with when we get there because, number one, it's lovely weather, great weather for a good season, and that starts with the Myrtle Beach Bowl between the Marshall Herd. Of course, you got to have the herd going. In the Yukon Huskies. If you guys look at these two teams, it is very close. Yukon has kind of made a rise back into football for somehow, some way, coming out with an okay season. It really has been an up and down last couple of years for them. Of course, Marshall is the newest addition to the Sun Belt Conference, so it's good to see them coming in here and competing for a bowl game pretty early on into their transfer over in that department. I think that this game here is going to be a lot of back and forth, pretty evenly matched teams. Marshall is getting a 12.5 in this one, which is a lot of points. Of course, UConn's upset a couple teams this year, so we'll see what happens there. Of course,
I just feel like Marshall with Notre Dame.
Yeah, I just feel like Marshall is more of a balanced team here. I think they've got a little more firepower on offense. Defensively, I think UConn probably wins in that department, but I just feel like it's too much offense. I'm going to take Marshall, and like Chet said, it is the herd. So, yes, I'm going to go with the herd in this game for the Myrtle Beach Bowl.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people who don't know college football are going to pick Marshall just because of the movie. I don't know why I said Mushi. Marshall thundering her. We are Marshall of that movie. So all the people, the regulars that play Bowl Mania this season are probably going to pick Marshall. But UConn, what a story of a program it's been in. We're seeing a Kansas team that hasn't made a bowl game since the early 2000s. UConn as well. They had a run in the early 2010s. When they made consecutive bowl seasons. But UConn was able, like you mentioned, to pull off a couple of upsets. Both of these teams, Marshall 8-4. A really good season in the Sun Belt, but they were just in a rough division with James Madison and Coastal Carolina really taking that conference. And then UConn is one of the independents, like we're seeing with Army. And then Navy is not, since they're in the American. But I'm going to go with Marshall in this one. I don't really see Marshall covering the spread in this one. Just something tells me that UConn is going to come to play in this one. They're going to give Marshall their A game. And like you mentioned, I mean, Marshall, this has not been a team that we have talked about since that Notre Dame upset. But after then, they've had some losses like they shouldn't. Like they got blown out by Appalachian State. They lost some really tough games on the road. But nonetheless, I think that their offense will travel in this bowl game. Both of these teams, are in cold weather up there in West Virginia and Connecticut, so they're definitely going to love this vacation. But I think that Marshall will win this one by a touchdown and control this game in the fourth quarter against UConn.
Yeah, speaking of vacation, I need that vacation, by the way. So I would love to take that vacation if I was either one of those teams. So it'll be a good one there for the Myrtle Beach Bowl. Heading out west now, we're headed to Boise, Idaho for the famous Idaho Potato Bowl between Eastern Michigan and San Jose State. I think this is the battle of Times New Roman and a decent logo. So it's going to be very interesting. No, I think, of course, proximity-wise, San Jose State wins this one, but Eastern Michigan is traveling out there. This isn't a vacation. I'm sorry. This just is not a vacation. Hey, let's go to Boise, Idaho for vacation, guys. No, your vacation is going to be on the blue field, so congratulations. I think this game sets up for a pretty good offensive shootout. San Jose State has no defense, zero defense. Eastern Michigan has very small amounts of defense that show up every now and then. But it's going to be a big offensive shootout in this one. San Jose State is the 3.5 in this one. I'm going to go with the unpopular opinion in this one. I'm going to take Eastern Michigan to win this one.
Roman.
Up and down season, kind of all over the place. Lost a couple of games they should not have. And it just seems like they really want this one. I think they're really going to want to finish on a high note. I've looked at a lot of Eastern Michigan stuff this year. They've played some big programs, and they've had a tough shootout with Buffalo. Of course, Buffalo ended up getting a better bowl game because of that win. I mean,
bring that up.
Yeah, Tyler and I did not win some money on that game, and of course that haunts us forever. And of course the giant green E is haunting me, but I'm gonna roll with the haunting E in this one.
They could have done way better. You're the Eagles, for crying out loud. At least put an eagle on the E. But this is one of the most boring logos in college football. But these are two scrappy teams. I expect this one to be a high-scoring shootout. Both of these defenses have been up and down. We've seen Eastern Michigan give up a ton of points, especially in that Buffalo game. That's really the only game that I've watched in Eastern Michigan since we put money on it. We were literally an Eastern Michigan win away from winning a little good chump change. But I think that this bowl slate here, the Idaho Potato Bowl, this has been a bowl game that has been here for several decades. They're going to be playing on the blue field. San Jose State, like you mentioned, has the advantage. They have experience playing out there and with the Mountain West competition. So I know that San Jose State is a favorite, but all the favorites in the bowl season never win. So I'm going to go with Eastern Michigan. I think that their offense will travel in this one. I look for this one to be a back and forth game. These are really two evenly matched teams. San Jose State 7-4. Eastern Michigan standing there at 8-4. So I think that Eastern Michigan actually will win this one by a field goal. So you can go ahead and flip the 3.5 point favorite to the Eagles. So I'm going to go with Eastern Michigan here for a little minor upset here.
Yeah, minor upset in this one, but always a good game. That'll be on December 20th. And of course, moving on to our next vacation destination. Right. We are headed to the roofclaim.com Boca Raton Bowl, of course, over there in Boca Raton, Florida. This is between the Liberty, lovely. Would you like to fill me in on what their name? They have the best name.
The Flame.
The Flame. I mean, talk about intimidating. It is fantastic. I still don't understand what their mascot is to be called the Flame. It just doesn't seem right. Like it seems something out of Harry Potter. You might as well call yourself the Phoenix at this point. But Liberty, of course, losing their head coach, they'll be playing against the Toledo Rockets. Both of these teams, it's kind of interesting. They play the same style offense. It is a high offensive team on both sides. I think defensively, Liberty's the better team. Offense is going to win this game. I just feel like Toledo has the rocket offense in order to play a game like this. I know in Bowl Mania, I picked Liberty. I did. But I'm going to roll with the Toledo Rockets. I think that watching them play in their conference championship game really gave me a lot of confidence in this pick because they really were. It was a close line in that one. I think they were the underdog in that game, and they ended up winning by a substantial margin. And Toledo really put the lid on that cookie jar, and I just feel like it's a good pick here for that. Of course, Liberty is losing key pieces. Of course, quarterback, they're losing head coach. It just seems like things are falling into place for Toledo to get a big bowl win here.
Yeah, this has a chance for Toledo to win this game. Just don't know what the mindset is going to be of Liberty, especially with Hugh Freeze leaving for Auburn. So that leaves some question marks, like how good is the offense going to be? So I know they have an offense coordinator, but you know dang well that Hugh Freeze was calling the plays half of the times. That's what he did at Ole Miss. That's why their offense was top of the SEC. But like you mentioned, Toledo absolutely dominated that game in the MAC championship. I pick Ohio and I'm not Toledo, so I'm not making that same mistake again. Toledo Rockets all the way. I think that they win this one. I mean, like you mentioned, I know they have really good offenses, but Toledo showed that their defense can rise to the occasion. They really held a hostile offense in Ohio. You know, Ohio was really dominating that side of their division, and Toledo was really controlling their side. So I think that Toledo, once again, the Vacation Bowl. We have so many Vacation Bowls, but I think that the Northern team will enjoy this one more than Liberty in this one. So I think that the Rockets will cruise to the MAC, and we have back-to-back games where we're picking the MAC.
Yeah, I think the MAC has a lot of action for us to pay attention to. So, it's good. Plus, I think we're trying to get some brownie points with our network, of course, picking Toledo. So it's a really good team. So I look forward to seeing this game. I will be watching this one. So it's going to be a good one. Of course, the next destination spot for bowl weekend is New Orleans. It's the RNL Carrier New Orleans Bowl. Between Western Michigan, the Hilltoppers, taking on the South Alabama Jaguars. Interesting thing here, Western Kentucky normally plays in bowl games. They played UTSA last year and got stomped. And that was a high powered shootout, but they got stomped. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. They have the worst mascot outside of the Stanford tree that looks high all the time. I think this is probably
If
number
you want
2.
to go back to that, we had the top 5 worst mascots. We might have to revive that this season.
We might have to, but when your mascot is named Big Red and it looks like Grimace from McDonald's, but just red, like bright red, there's a problem. If we can't identify what the heck that blob is, there is an issue. The Hilltoppers need to find a better mascot. Please find a better one. It's killing me having to watch and see pictures of Western Kentucky's mascot. I do not wish any good coming to Big Red in the near future. But of course, getting to South Alabama, looking at the stats here, a team that's completely flipped. It is the Tulane of the Sun Belt, flipping all the way around to a 10-2 season after being 2-10 the previous year, 3-9 the year before, 1-11 the year before. So I mean, it really has been a flip script there for them. Transfer quarterbacks have been the name of the game. So I think this game here, South Alabama has the defense to beat Western Kentucky because Western Kentucky really doesn't have anything else outside of offense. They lose their starting quarterback to the transfer portal. He is gone. He won't be playing in this game. And I think South Alabama has what it takes to win this game. You are a 10-win team playing close to home, and you should get it done here. They are the 3.5-point favorite. I'm going to roll with the favorite, and I'm going to roll with my South Alabama Jaguars. Of course, for those that you don't know, I do go to South Alabama, so I do have a little bit of a bias. There's a lot of buzz around the school for this one, and it's great to see them playing in a big bowl game like this one in New Orleans.
Yeah, definitely got to pick your school here in this one. Bring up a good point. Western Kentucky without their quarterback, like how's their offense going to do it? I mean, like you mentioned, their defense has been definitely been a question mark throughout this season. Not gonna lie, I did watch a lot of Western Kentucky this season. They had some good wins, and I mean, like every other team, they just had really bad losses this season. Like you mentioned, South Alabama. I think they finally found the right head coach. I think that he's really done a terrific job building this program, like you mentioned, going from a 3-9 season in 2021 to now 10-2. Really was knocking on the doorstep of winning that division. All they had to do was beat Troy on that Thursday night game. And I mean, to be honest with you, South Alabama fans are going to travel in this one, like you mentioned. They're spread all throughout the coastline from Louisiana all the way down to Mobile. So I think that this is going to be a pro South Alabama crowd here in the Big Easy. It is a late kickoff here at 8 o'clock Central Time. South Alabama is the heavy favorites, already at 7.5. I think they cover that. I think that defense is going to be dominating for South Alabama. They really win the turnover battle in pretty much every game that they play in. They really have some dudes in the secondary, and I think that they have the offense to really put it on Western Kentucky the way that LaDamian Webb has been playing in the backfield. He's really been dominant. And Carter Bradley, he's really been finding his open receivers down the field. So I think that this team, the South Alabama team, has really been rolling all season. There are really two losses that you look at as a close loss to UCLA, or 1-point loss on the road against a really good team, and then a really good Troy team. So those are really not two bad losses to hang your head on. And like you mentioned, you have bias to South Alabama. So do I. My sister went there as well. So I got to go with the Jags. So I think that South Alabama wins this one pretty convincingly.
Yeah, I think if I didn't pick South Alabama, I was going to hear it from the guys that I have classes with that do play on the team. I have a tight end and a linebacker that sit in that class with me. So yeah, it's yeah, I was going to hear it if I didn't pick South Alabama. So I think no, excellent. Like you mentioned with their head coach, Kane Womack has definitely turned that team all the way around. Signed a brand new contract before the end of the season, and really they've gone all in with him. And that team has really gotten behind him, and no wonder. I mean, he was a good offensive coordinator at Indiana before coming back to South Alabama, and really has shaped that team to be a bowl-bound team for many years to come. They really could have been a ranked team had they beat UCLA there. UCLA was a good team this year. If they do beat UCLA there, I mean, we're talking they could be in the top 25 and be a ranked team playing in a really decent bowl game. But of course, you lose the game to Troy and you fall down a little further, and not being able to play in that conference championship game that I really think they could have won had they made it there. So I think there's a lot of upside to their season, but a lot of falling short of expectations for them to win their Sun Belt Conference. But yeah, keep your head up, keep your chin up, and go get you a big win in the New Orleans Bowl. Moving on to our next one is the Lockheed Martin Armed Forces Bowl here between the Baylor Bears and the United States Air Force. Of course, it's the Armed Forces Bowl. I don't know if last year, did we have any Armed Forces teams play in the Armed Forces Bowl last year?
I don't think so.
I don't think there was.
Let me fact check that and see if it was.
I just feel it seems kind of weird for us not to ever have any, but for some strange reason, I want to say that either last year
it
or
was
the
Army in Missouri last year.
Was it Army last year?
Yeah.
So
Army
maybe it was
8-4.
Yeah, so Army went 8-4 last year. Of course, Air Force goes 9-3 this year. A good season for Air Force. Baylor finishes the season at 500 at 6-6. Although Baylor's the favorite in this one, it's kind of weird. It's kind of wacky. Of course, Baylor put up a good fight against TCU, kind of the closest one there. without beating TCU. They rushed their field goal unit on, and they kick the game. TCU kicks the game winner. So it's big for them, and they hold on. But of course, Baylor puts up a big fight. You've got Dave Aranda. I mean, he's gonna put together a really good defensive scheme every time. He's a defensive minded head coach, and they're going to put up a fight in this one between against Air Force. I'm sorry, against Air Force. Of course, Air Force we talked about was the number one running team in the country. I mean, Tyler, they were averaging over 400 yards of rushing. I mean, that's insanity. So I think that they have all out gone out with the offense there, and they are my team to win the Armed Forces Bowl. The Air Force Falcons, I just unbelievable season for them at 9-3. I hope they keep it up because it is good to see them competing at a high level against some of these schools and go get you a win against a really good Power 5 team.
Yeah, Air Force has had a really good season. They finished right behind Boise State, and like I mentioned to you, I listened to our preseason show, and I had Air Force actually being one of the teams as a dark horse to potentially be that Group of 5 team that we talked about at the end of the season. It's still a 9-3, but the team in the Group of 5 was actually Tulane. Like you mentioned, Baylor, not the season that they were hoping for. They were preseason top 10. They had a lot of guys coming back, and they also lost some key guys. Petrie was one of their guys in the secondary, and they lost one of their running backs as well to the NFL draft. So I know that hasn't been as great of a season as Baylor, but I just feel like they finished their season off on a strong note. The losses that you look at for Air Force, if they can't get their running game going, it's going to be a long game for them. And I trust Dave Aranda and their defensive line. I think that they have the defensive line and the guys up front to really match up against Air Force. So I could see this being a defensive battle. Air Force defense is always going to come to play, especially if you're playing against one of these armed forces school. So I think it's going to be a very close game, a low-scoring game, like a 24-21 type of battle. Air Force is going to give you a battle no matter what you have across your jersey. But in the end, I hate to do this to our troops, but I got to go with Baylor. It's hard for me to pick against Air Force, especially in the Armed Forces Bowl. But I had the Baylor Bears finishing off an okay season with their 7th win of the year.
All right. I'm in belief of the double-digit wins for the Air Force. And, of course, family ties to the Air Force. I got to roll with the Air Force. Of course, in that one, 9-3 season, great for them. And we'll see what happens in the Armed Forces Bowl. Moving on to our next bowl game, it is the Radiance Technologies Independence Bowl between the University of Louisiana Lafayette Raging Cajuns and the University of Houston Cougars. I think this game here is a strange one. I think this is one of those odd ones where you scratch your head at. ULL had an up and down season. Of course, they finished 500 on the year, and they get a bowl bid in this one. Kind of a rough year in the Sun Belt. But of course, you had a lot of good teams in the Sun Belt, so it's tough to win against some really good teams that put up some winning records this year that don't normally do it. Of course, they don't have, biggest key is Billy Napier's not their head coach anymore. For them to get back to a bowl game is actually big within itself. When you lose your head coach, it is starting over really from the ground up. So it's been interesting, and I really didn't see the Raging Cajuns here at this stage this early. So they are ahead of schedule in my book. On the other side for Houston, the Cougars lost some strange games this year. It's just kind of weird to lose games at home that they shouldn't have lost. They lost to Tulane, and it didn't make a lot of sense. And then we figured out that, okay, Tulane's actually for real. So I can kind of put that one to the side because, I mean, Tulane's really good, so I can't fault Houston that much. Normally we see them ahead of Tulane in that department. But Houston, like we mentioned earlier, will be going to the Big 12. So they've got a lot to step up and look forward to here in the future. They need a big bowl win here, and I think they get it against the ULL Raging Cajuns. I'm going to roll with the Houston Cougars in this one. Get you a bowl win here in the state of Louisiana. Kind of a strange place to have a bowl game in Shreveport, Louisiana, but it is what it is. Go get you a win.
Yeah, both of these teams are still going to be excited to play in the bowl season. Honestly, a disappointing year for Houston. I mean, they were the odds-on favorite to take the American Conference in the preseason. I know that both of us were very high on this Houston team. I mean, having all of that hype and finishing off a 7-5 season definitely disappointing. I mean, you have Clayton Tune coming back. You have all the offensive firepower, but the defense really falls flat. I know, like you mentioned, the game that we really are still thinking about is the Tulane game, but the really game that I'm thinking about is giving up 77 points to SMU. Stephen Mordecai had a game. It was 77-63. So this Houston defense has got to be able to rise to the occasion against Louisiana team that's going to be wanting to play. There's going to be a lot of fans from both fan bases. Not Shreveport is not too far from both campuses. It's just up the road from them. But in the end, I think that Houston's offense is just going to dominate Louisiana in this one. This could be more of the high-scoring bowl games that we have seen. Just Houston's defense just hasn't been there this season. Louisiana Lafayette's going to have to control the line of scrimmage. If they do want to win this game, they're going to be able to run the ball effectively. But I just don't really see that. I think that Houston will control this game from start to finish.
Yeah, it's a clean sweep there for us in the Independence Bowl. Last one we're going to be talking about, I think, is the best name of all time. It's a Union Home Mortgage Gasparilla Bowl.
Used to be better with Bad Boy Mowers.
Yeah, it is in Tampa, Florida here. Of course, it's just big that they're playing at the Pirate Ship. So congratulations to both of these two teams. You are shooting to play at the Pirate Ship, and you got it. Congratulations. No, it's the Wake Forest Demon Deacons up against the Missouri Tigers. It is ACC versus SEC in this one. I'm not going to spend very long on it. I think the better of the two seasons is from Wake Forest. I'm going to go with Wake Forest to win it. I think offense wins this game. Wake Forest has the offense, experienced quarterback. They've been shaky. They've lost some weird games, but they need to finish out on a big bowl win. And this is their opportunity right before Christmas to do that and send out their quarterback on a really good note at the end of this year, because it was kind of a disappointing season for Wake Forest. So end it on a positive note and get a win here in the Gasparilla Bowl.
Yeah, disappointing season. You went from last year participating in the ACC championship game going up against Pitt. Question marks of whether Sam Hartman was even going to play in this one. He was dealing with some personal health issues of his own. Good for him that he was able to play the full season and stay healthy. But Wake Forest, they have the offense, don't get me wrong, but their defense just has been lackluster this season. That's really been what's fallen down to a 7-5 season. Missouri, on the other hand, is really the only team in the SEC to really play Georgia close. They honestly should have won that game. Their offense, whenever you got into the red zone, it was just too many field goals. Whenever you had to beat Georgia, you had to find the red zone. So Missouri has had some close losses, and they also had some close wins. The last time that we saw this was this team against Arkansas in the border war against Arkansas. So I think that Missouri is really one of those sneaky teams that can come up on you and beat you. And Vegas is agreeing. Wake Forest is only the 1-point favorite. So this is pretty much a pick-em game. So I think I trust Missouri's defense more in this matchup. So I got to go with the SEC in this one. You know me, I'm never going to go against the SEC in the bowl games. But it is interesting to note that the SEC has hovered around 500 in the last two seasons in bowl season. So Missouri's going to be actually Florida's going to be the first one up. So they might already be 0-1. So Missouri's going to try and avenge Florida's loss probably to Oregon State in the Las Vegas Bowl. So I think that Missouri gets it done. Wake Forest has had success against SEC. They beat Vanderbilt pretty convincingly earlier in the year whenever Vandy was struggling earlier in the year. So I think that with the way that Brady Cook has been playing, even without Dominique Levitt since he transferred out, I think that with Luther Burton, with the wide receiver, I think that Missouri, with Eli Drinkwitz, it's been a really good season. I think that they could, they're a play away logistically or from like an 8-win season, beating teams like Georgia and Auburn, but still nonetheless to get a bowl slate here, maybe you can avenge your loss from last year's bowl slate. They lost to Army. So I think that Missouri will pick up a bowl win here against Wake Forest. I think it'll be a back and forth battle. Probably going to be one of the most underrated games in this bowl slate.
And of course, guys, those are the bowl games that we're going to be talking down and breaking to you guys this week. There will be more on the bowl schedule here coming up next week when we talk about the games around Christmas time and around the holidays, getting close to the end. And yes, go Jags. always. I hope they do get a big bowl win coming up here. I was going to try to go to the game, but I'm not sure if that's going to work out. So I'm going to try to go to a basketball game before that. But that's beside the point. But of course, if you guys want to get any more of the content from our shows, you guys can go over to our YouTube page and watch the show, or you guys can catch our audio show wherever you get your podcast. Last night we recorded the Sports Scramble podcast show. You guys can head over there. We had the four of us back as always. The original Scramble is back for that one. So if you guys want to go over there and see all of our NFL talk, our little college football segment there as well, a little talk around the NBA as well. So you guys can check that out over at Sports Scramble. Or you guys can see Tyler and Wade's SEC talk tomorrow night on Facebook. If you guys want to check that out, they're going to be talking all things SEC, and I think Tyler and Wade have a little specialty going on there tomorrow night. And of course, you guys can watch that specialty show tomorrow night on Facebook. Thank you guys so much for watching. We will see you guys next Monday for some more ball game talk.